You're watching the AM show, and I like to think this is the conversation you have been waiting for. Wait till I show you some of the books we're going to be going through on the conversation. Now, making the Kwame Nkrumah legacy enduring, how should it find expression in definitely our political economy, leadership fight against corruption and galamsey, and our quest for national development? Today, we will unpack all of that issues. And of course, joining me in studio is Dr. Kokode-Nwamase. We've missed him. Vicky Bright, she is a lawyer, legal practitioner, I should say. We've missed both of you so much. Where have you both been? Where have you been?
I've been around.
Are you sure?
My sister has been traveling.
I've been traveling.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back.
You.
It's a holiday today. We're excited.
Yes.
We're happy that we managed to get Doc to put on his polo top and come into the studio today.
Yes.
But, Doc, the books will be.
Oh, you know, when you come to the subject of a great man, you can only be humble and appear with reverence and deference to those who know better and those who lived the times. And of course, the man himself, if you are lucky to have had him right. So, yeah, not my reference. So that it's not Kwabena Bomfeh talking.
Right.
But it is Kwame Nkrumah speaking. It is the Hansard of Parliament talking. It is the historical document of the Bond of 1844, which I'm sure you have never seen. It was handwritten.
Oh, wow. I've only seen a soft copy of this.
Handwritten. Wait, Makai.
Debbie.
Makai transcribable.
Have you?
Oh.
Oh, wow. Bond of 1844.
Yes, the Bond of... so you see how I transcribed it.
Oh, this is regal.
It's amazing.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes. So, and people have referred to it with not so much what is contained in it. There are 4 clauses in it, and none of them actually said that we were surrendering ourselves to the supremacy of British imperial rule. We recognized them. I mean, it was some chiefs, 8 chiefs, and unfortunately, even the great Osajefo at some point catapulted in this document by almost making it look like it is the Bond of 1844 that gave the British the power to be here. It never gave them power. And so Ben Sasaba actually insisted that they were here illegally. So in their quest for independence, they were not asking for the British to grant us independence as we eventually had. But to say, go, leave. Because you came here illegally, you came here unconstitutionally. And he referred to copious notes from the debates in the British House of Commons, where the British legislators were complaining about the presence of their nation here without law.
So in simple terms, you say that the Bond of 1844 was a document that did what, particularly?
It's a document that never bound us to colonial rule, but we have made it seem as though it actually bonded us.
It didn't have any indirect way.
Well, if you read the provisions, what it simply said was that we were recognizing the presence of the monarch in the castle and the people around the castle. Okay, that we were recognizing the jurisdiction of the British in those areas. Then they also said that human sacrifice, what they called panyaring, was improper, so it ought not to be done. We were recognizing the right of people to live and so on and so forth. So in essence, it's something that if I would just read what Commander Hill actually wrote, he said, "My Lord, it is a correspondent that he sent. An opportunity offering for England tonight. I am induced thus hurriedly to acquaint for your lordship that several of the chiefs from the different parts of the country adjacent to the Cape Coast Castle have visited me today in great state to pay their respects on the transfer of the government." Maclean had been replaced by Commander Hill. I have for some days been aware that an idea was believed by the natives of it being the intention of Her Majesty's government to pronounce freedom to all slaves within the limits over which jurisdiction had been exercised. I need to tell your lordship that an attempt to carry any such measure would cause a revolution. The chiefs were delighted in my informing them it was quite an idle report, and that the export slave trade was all that we prohibited. They expressed satisfaction in my telling them they were not at liberty to ill-use their domestic slaves, and if a person inherited a slave, that person was not at liberty to sell that slave again, but such slave was to be considered a member of the family, and so on and so forth, which was actually part of our tradition. At slaves, our sense of slavery was different from what became the transatlantic slavery. To date, if you go to royal families, and I'm privileged on both sides of my parenting to come from, you never tell people who are not real blood that they are not until the situation arises. So we need a lot of education on some of these things, and I am particularly happy that Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's adopted or assumed birth date. I mean, he writes about it in himself.
Okay.
That 21st September was written by the school teacher who wrote for him. Oh. And he accepted it because it was a line of least resistance, according to him in his autobiography. Because if he did the calculations according to him, he may have been born around 18 September 1912 and not 1909.
Interesting. Okay, well, we've journeyed so long from...
And let me just say this, because if you take 21st September 1909, it will be a Tuesday and not Saturday.
And yet he's Kwame.
And he's Kwame. It goes to endorse the fact of what he himself had written in his autobiography.
Okay. Well, Vicky, we've journeyed from 1844 till today. And every day, I mean, as a child, I would write and read about Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, a hero that we all held dearly. First of all, how does today mean for you? I like to think that most of the days in your life, especially because you're a legal practitioner, you would definitely be coming across, you'll be reading a lot more about him. But today, again, now brings the conversation about him to the fore. How is today coming up for you?
For me, I think Nkrumah's dream is not finished, hasn't been realized. And every Founders Day, I'm reminded of the urgent need for us to actually finish his uncompleted dream of achieving real independence and real self-reliance. You know, I see it as, you know, Nkrumah undoubtedly laid the foundation of our independence. And I see it as an uncompleted house. It's up to us to build that house, complete it, furnish it, etc., etc. And we are forever in the process of building this house. And of course, development doesn't happen overnight. But the steps we are taking, it's just baby steps. We should be leaping now. We should be leaping, and we are not. So, you know, he was a bold, visionary, inspirational leader. He was a nationalist. He was a Pan-Africanist, you know, and he really caused Ghana to punch far above its weight by placing us right in the middle of the struggle for independence with all the other African states. And, you know, when you look at, he's a symbol of national pride. All over the world, people celebrate Nkrumah. It's a shame we didn't celebrate him enough, you know, but then isn't that always the case? But history has judged him kindly. And I think will continue to do so. He deserves the place that he occupies in history. He is a man, or was a man, who had the courage to dream big. And it seems like we've lost our courage to dream big as a nation. We talk a lot. He was a talker and he was a doer.
Thank you.
Nkrumah was a talker and he was a doer. All we do these days is talk and talk and talk and talk. And then, if we're lucky, as citizens, a little bit will be done. But other things that actually erode continuously our ability to be self-reliant as a nation, our ability to be truly independent as a nation are now looming large in our society and causing us not to really reach our full potential as Ghana. You know, and so for me, I feel that Nkrumah's legacy is still relevant, very, very relevant. His political vision, his Pan-Africanism is still relevant. The economic strategies he had for our nation and his vision and the steps he took towards industrializing Ghana, they are still relevant. And I feel that his belief that education and human capital are a necessary pillar to nation building, that is still relevant today. You know, his call for us to, let me say, our cultural identity, the cultural identity that he got us to identify with. So what I mean by that is that his call for us to redefine ourselves outside colonial lenses, you know, which was particularly relevant since we were just coming off the back of colonialism or colonialist rule, still applies as we continuously battle new colonial economic structures. You know, so, and his call to service and sacrifice, that's something we don't see a lot of in fact, we don't see it in politics at all now, I dare say. You know, that whole impetus to serve and to sacrifice. A lot of politicians feel they are doing Ghanaians a favor, and they are not. It's actually a call to service. You have to be passionate about serving the people. And I think we need a mindset shift in those who occupy our public offices, that they are here to serve us, not just in the final year of the 4-year term, but actually to serve the nation Ghana. And I think when that mindset shift happens, we will now begin to see some progress, real and significant progress in our society.
Well, that's quite a good one, Vicky. You have just said a lot, which a lot of us actually would relate to. Doc, I'll come back to you. In your readings about him and of him, what did you discover was that major motivation for him? Was he just a child who was born to be what he is? Or he picked up some traits from somewhere? What was his real motivation?
So I would want to take a leaf from Nana Kobna Nketia, the Faith, Omahine of Esikado, when he wrote in his book, African Culture in Governance and Development, at page 530, that Nkrumah must always be discussed with humility. Indeed, he was a great man. He had a stark appreciation of colonialism. Discerningly, he had to dance to the tune of diplomatic hypocrisy at times. Nkrumah writes in his book about a certain mysticism about him, okay, that was informed by his own thinking and based on narratives that his mother had told him. Mind you, Nkrumah was merely stillborn. At birth, it took a while for him to come or to show presence of life. And there's an account that believes that, you know, there was some agitation in the realms of the metaphysics. So it took a native to go and bring a certain leaf to perform certain things. And then they sang, the women there sang, and, you know, in the euphoria, he responded to life. Then he talks about how his mother told him at one point, strapped on her back, they were crossing a stream on one of their life struggles. And he told the mother that he was standing on a fish. And interestingly, the mother found her feet, one of her feet on, having trapped a fish down, So these were some of the things that he himself recounts that it made him, whether you want to look at him as somebody with
quite a different child,
special,
mystical child.
But don't we all, from time to time, reflect and see ourselves as special if we want to really ponder of our uniqueness, who we are? And that, for me, is an invitation that Nkrumah offers us today. That see yourself as unique, see yourself as specially made with an agenda, a task to perform to bring all of us together. Now, going forward, I think he prepared himself, and he knew that he had a place in the life of his family and then the life of the nation that he was born into. So right from the word go, from his basic level, he challenged himself to learn, to appreciate more about the world. And so he was, motivated by people like Dr. Kokode-Nwamase. And he talks about how, and it's interesting how he saw Kokode-Nwamase disagreeing with Marcus Garvey on his Africa for Africans, and yet the two men both inspired him. He writes in his autobiography how nothing in literature inspired him more than the philosophy and opinions of Marcus Garvey. And he talks about how Dr. Kokode-Nwamase gave him the inspiration to want to be a somebody, a black man, and the idea of the eagle that soars and flies and goes in to do what is manifest. And I think at the end of the day, having prepared himself through learning, he was able to kill himself the appetite for material wealth acquisition and the vain glories of what I need today. Positioning himself into a future which is today and more years to come, that we will remember him and discuss what he had done. And I think that it was humble to appreciate that we could go wrong. He could go wrong. So he makes the point that there is nothing greater than for people to have the right to govern or misgovern themselves, than for somebody else to do that. And this is where he made the statement that we preferred self-government in danger to servitude in tranquility. People have often misquoted that or quoted that out of place to say that he was threatening that he will imprison people and so on and so forth. And of course, the excesses of his time and his era, the PDA was avoidable. It was a bad law.
For that one, right? If you went into Nkrumah's mind today, what do you think he sought to achieve with that PDA? What did you think? Because I don't think that he took any decision out of the vacuum.
Yes.
If you went straight into his mind, what do you think?
So you always, as we speak today, you have the Patriots Act in the United States. In the in the UK, in the US, you have the Anti-Terrorism Act. These are all acts that limit freedom and so on and so forth under certain conditions. I'll categorize the PDA in that light. And Emeritus Professor, the late Emeritus Professor D.E.K. Amenume actually discusses that in this seminal work of his, The Coming of Age in the Second Half of the 20th Century, the case of Ghana. How Ghana is compared or comparable under Nkrumah to a period in the history of the United States, a period in the history of the United Kingdom that such laws were made. So, yes, they were. However, you look at it within the framework of human rights, the general principles. Did we need it? The law did not give remedies to itself within its architecture, and that is where we fault it.
But the Act is Preventive Detention Act.
Yes,
so
Preventive Detention Act, and it gave way to abuse that he himself had cause to complain about. That they were.
So it wasn't the fact that he wanted that law, but it was how the law was implemented.
Absolutely, how it was crafted and how it was implemented and executed. And that was avoidable. You talk about the one-party state. You didn't need it. The CPP was winning elections overwhelmingly. You didn't need the one-party state.
Mm-hmm. What do you think was his fears? Why did he think he needed a one-party state?
Sometimes you need to understand that Nkrumah was not just him. There were people around him. And I would want to beg something that Senior Kweku Baku Jr. told me at our base at Laboni coffee shop. They had gone to India on a state visit, and India had introduced something like PDA. So it was in response to unbridled opposition, where Nkrumah's life had been under attack from 1955. His mother's house had been bombed at Newtown here. Children, when a stadium was being opened, they were bombed and maimed. So it was a response.
He wanted to insulate himself.
Not insulate himself, but don't forget that there had been an attempt on his life at the Flagstaff House, now Jubilee House, okay, and many other incidents. The Kulungungu bomb, that one was subsequent.
Subsequent, yeah.
It was later. But the important thing is that there was a certain kind of opposition mindset. Having been beaten at the poll, they were not ready to accept their defeat and were going at all lengths to do things that were unlawful. So there was the need to do something drastic at it. In doing that, I think the system went overboard. So the story I was saying, when they came back, I mean, Bomfeh, if I don't quote it exactly, forgive me, is that when they got to Parliament, it's one we have brought the thing to deal with the opposition. And you look at the debate on the PDA. A member of the opposition at the time, I don't recall the name, actually warned that this thing, you will suffer it. And one of the people who eventually came to suffer, I mean, under the PD and all that, came from the CPP side, some of the people. So those are some of the excesses. But put that together, you see, we balance it. Every life has got its nights and sunlight. On the scale of things, Nkrumah is grand, great guy. And I like the way one of his very close people, by name Genevieve Kanu, Nkrumah the man, how she ends it. Kwame Nkrumah never was a god, but he was an astute politician, an indefatigable leader, an able statesman. Above all, he was human. He was a man with a dream, a man with a vision for Africa, a great man. This is my testimony. She was close to him. And indeed, in 2000, when BBC put up a poll that discussed the African in the minds and eyes of Africans, the name Kwame Nkrumah emerged as the greatest of all. What more can be said?
In the millennium, right?
In the millennium, of the millennium, not the century.
Okay.
Of the millennium.
Yeah, he was voted Africa's millennium
of the millennium
leader.
And
I'll take a minute and come to you, Vicky, because when you started off, you were quite praising of him.
Yes.
Which if you take about 10 people, 8 people will be quite praising of him. Today when we discuss democracy, some way, somehow, this PDA that Doc is just giving clarity to, giving some history to, would come. And I ask you because you're a lawyer. When we discuss democracy, what kind of shadows does the PDA cast on our democracy today? Does it at all?
Well, I mean, obviously the PDA was not a good thing, you know. I can understand. Let me start off by saying that no human being is without flaws.
Sure.
And therefore no leader is without flaws, because all leaders are human. Okay? So I think that is probably the one blot on Nkrumah's leadership. But does it erase all that he did? No, it didn't. Because all leaders have had blots on their leadership, you know. And I think that for me, it was a response to, there was a lot of political opposition, which is fine because, we need that. The coup attempts, the assassination plots, and I guess that was his human response to that and called it national unity, etc., etc. But I think above all that it was to preserve his development agenda for Ghana. Kwame Nkrumah's vision was something that others could not see or comprehend. I mean, building the Akosombo Dam, at the time he built, the capacity of it, when we were just how many million people? I mean, we were just
7 million.
Yeah, 6-7 million people. And it's still servicing us now. We're now 32+ million people. So he had a vision that was way ahead of his time. And I suspect that there was a degree of frustration, that others couldn't see. Brilliant people, like geniuses, often struggle with this because they can see what others can't see. And it gets them very frustrated and very, So I think he was fearful that what he had for Ghana was not going to be achieved unless he had no opposition.
Right.
That's my personal belief. And I say that because of the kind of vision that he had. And I also say that because when you look at history and you see countries that came from nothing to first world, they always had that long period of no opposition that allowed them to stamp their mark on the nation. And after that, they then did the democracy, So that's how I see it.
Right. Doc, if Nkrumah existed today, and of course if he wasn't old, if he was still his young self, right?
It would have been 160 years.
If he wasn't
when my grandmother was that age, she was literally bananas.
For example, if Nkrumah existed, say, 50 years ago, if he was maybe your age, right? And you look at the vision that he had, would you have agreed to the one-party system that he wanted to operate?
You see, let's
when you're answering that, right, take a trip to some of the contradictions in your readings about him as well that you think that you may want to draw our attention to.
Okay, so first of all, the one-party state, according to Nkrumah, was envisioned along our traditional chieftaincy political system. Now, any visitor to Manshia or Yagbang, that is the Gunja, Yagbangra, if you go, you would realize that it's a governance system without political parties. But it is a governance system that is not a monopoly. There are differences, and differences are allowed. And that is to answer to those who often say that Nkrumah was opposed to chiefs and chieftaincy system. People must understand that Kwame Nkrumah was installed as the chief of Takwa-Nsuaim.
Was he?
Yes. And those who care to know, there's a connection between the people of Takwa-Nsuaim and Wenchi, where Buzia comes from. What I'm wearing, this Nkrumah dress I'm wearing down here,
yes,
that maybe our viewers can see, it was gifted to me by the late Ama Buzia, the sister of the late Professor Buzia. And she bought this and another piece for Miss Samia Yaba Nkrumah in 2009. It was a gesture she was showing of the connection that could be there about them. But back to the issue of chieftaincy. Nkrumah's view was that for us to move towards the vision he had, we needed to build consensus. And that multi-party democracy then, as people are even beginning to talk about problems with it now, the way we are doing it, unbridled partisanship. I must oppose MFA mainly because I don't belong to her party. No matter how reasonable her argument is. Okay, so he sought that we should have a one party where all of us can speak from. I mean, sitting where I'm sitting today, I think that it is not something I will ever vote for.
No, I wouldn't.
I would want, and if I live
even
at
if
the
you
time,
trust the person,
if I live under Nkrumah, I would still have opposed that view, one-party state. I would not have voted for it. What people must understand is that one-party state was not something Kwame Nkrumah forced on Ghanaians. Nothing. In fact, this book that is an attack on Nkrumah actually recognizes that, and this was with a foreword by Justice Olenu. Nothing Nkrumah did was without law. Everything he did, he made sure that it followed due process. So there was a referendum in 1964 where Ghanaians voted for one-party state, which actually came into being in 1965. So people must understand that there was no one-party state until 1965. Okay? And until then, there were opposition elements in parliament. So this was Nkrumah's view. Unfortunately, you see, human beings, we are created with the liberty to choose. That's the God-given right in us. To remove or take away that choice, to do what we please or what we want.
But if he took it to Parliament, he was going to get it passed.
Yes, and it was passed by Parliament. Parliament could make a bad law.
Yeah, yes.
And it was a referendum, not Parliament. This one was not even a parliamentary act. It was a referendum by Ghanaians.
Okay.
So we had chosen that we wanted one-party state.
But then, you know, there's the argument that it was interfered with.
Yes, exactly.
And also, this whole voting thing, one needs to be careful because apartheid.
That's right.
When I went to the apartheid museum, I realized that it was the people were actually voted in. And then little by little, they started chipping away. What I'll say about that blot, if you like, on Nkrumah's administration is that he has left us today with a responsibility to balance visionary leadership with democratic accountability. You see, we have to strike that balance. So for me, that is the lesson that's to be learned there.
Yeah. I think that at the end of the day, the one-party state thing, today, we have entrenched in the 1992 Constitution that Parliament cannot entertain any proposal whatsoever in respect of a one-party.
Yes, it's one of the entrenched.
It is a positive lesson we have learned from the Nkrumah era.
Yes.
Again, and that is why I was very, very and vehemently opposed to what President John Dramani Mahama has done in removing the Chief Justice.
Why?
You see?
Let's not go back.
Oh, no. You see, but these are some of the things.
It's in the Constitution.
Hold on. In the Constitution, as Hitler said, it's just a book. You can exploit it and exploit it mischievously. And that is my view. The contention is still at the Supreme Court. They have not, decided on that matter. But the lesson I'm linking is what happened in 1963 when Nkrumah, by stroke of pen, removed the Chief Justice.
But that was a stroke of pen. This was not by a stroke of pen.
This is completely different.
I'm
completely different.
I'm coming. You can say it is completely different, depending on where you are looking at it. Where I'm sitting, there's no much difference. If you look at how we have offended the processes right from the beginning to the end, and the hurried manner in which we did it, against the backdrop that this was a premeditated and pre-communicated matter. But again, I'm saying that the procedures that were put in the 1969 Constitution, 79 Constitution, and 1992 Constitution, which processes I feel, and I strongly hold so, and I've been advised by senior counsel on this, we are arguing so at the Supreme Court, yet to be determined, that we violated at every step of it. We took it from the era of Nkrumah, that we should not allow the situation where it could easily be done. Because that era, it was more easier to remove the Chief Justice than to remove any other justice of the superior courts. And even now, it appears to be so, the way we have gone on, if we allow what happened with Justice Tokonu to persist. Then the last one, perhaps, is the cross-carpeting issue. Today, if an MP decides that they are crossing carpet from one side to another side, or leave their party to join another party, it triggers a by-election automatically. We took it from lessons under the Nkrumah period, where MPs could just pack their books and say, I've crossed carpet, I'm going to join, without deference to the people who elected them. Now you cannot do that, you know. The only problem with that arrangement is that the president can so decide. And the Constitution is quiet about that one. So maybe going forward, yes.
And so decide on what?
The president can leave the party he won elections on. And the Constitution doesn't say what it says should happen to an MP if he or she does that.
Right.
Okay, so I'm saying that going forward, these are things that we can learn from.
In reading his biography, maybe that's how we'll be ending our conversation on today and the legacy. For you, what shocked you most about his writing? Not the account by other people, but he himself.
You know, the guy was an enigma beyond the word genius. I will not, you know, I've read quite on him and read quite from him. His speeches, his articles, and his books. There's a certain common strand running through them. The liberty of the man and human being, respect for human beings and the right to choose how to live and how to be governed. It runs through, and that the black man, the African, is capable of managing his or her own affairs.
And yet he wanted a one-party system?
No, but that's what I'm saying, that you find some contradictions.
Okay.
However, when you read them on the whole, and you see the motive and the thought, the intendment, you can agree that this guy, he erred, even if he erred on the side of caution.
Right.
And we can applaud him that he lived a great man. He lived a great life. Look, he said something that Jumil recounts in her book, that if I die, I want to die with dignity and courageous. And that's how he died.
Vicky, what are your final words for today? Remembering his legacy.
Yeah, so for me, we need to adopt his vision to today's reality. And for me, I guess reimagining what self-reliance means for us today, looking at these things. So where he built factories, we need to look at our digital economy, Akoso Modern, renewable energy. His call to youth means we need to entrench skills or develop to a different level, skills and entrepreneurship. And it's a Pan-Africanism, is the AFCFTA, as I see it now. We need to, if we implement that properly, Africa will then be in a position to compete globally as a giant and not as fragmented states as we currently do.
Oh.
I would want to read him when he founded the Ghana National College.
Yes.
In 1948. 9 years before the nation Ghana was founded on March 6. And I'm talking about the name, the adoption of the name Ghana. He was actually punished by the UGCC leadership for setting up that college. This is what he told them on the morning of July 20, 1948. Quote, think, study hard, work with sustained effort. As never before, we want thinkers, thinkers of great thoughts. We want doers, doers of great deeds. Of what use is your education if you cannot be of help to your nation in an hour of need? And I pose that to Ghanaians.
I guess what I'll say as well to wrap up is I started off with the metaphor of the uncompleted building. And so I think it's time for us to complete that building and realize his dream of full and proper, meaningful independence and self-reliance as a nation.
You are quoting Professor Kosa when he gave the
oh really?
Kwame Nkrumah Memorial lecture. He said the uncompleted, the uncompleted.
Then you are really are thinking exactly how you.
The uncompleted house.
I never heard that.
Yeah.
The uncompleted house Nkrumah built.
I'd have a simple question if I met him today. What was his favorite food? Imagine.
Oh, he writes about it.
He writes about what's his favorite food.
I would say let those who want to know go and read Ghana autobiography of Kwame Nkrumah.
Okay.
He was not much a food man. He fasted a lot.
I see.
Yeah.
What a man.
It was part of
Indeed,
him.
what a man.
He fasted a lot.
What a man.
Yeah.
Doc, well, thank you so much. Of course, I'll solicit that information and tell you when I come back. But Vicky, thank you. Enjoy your holiday.
Thanks.
All right. Well, here's another important thing you should know. Peaceful assembly is a constitutional right and should be protected. Ghana's laws and human rights organizations like Amnesty International have on several occasions called on police and courts to respect that right and only limit it to where strictly necessary, proportionate, and even lawful. But to what extent have these calls been heeded? Who is enforcing the protection of the protester and protest? Here's a documentary which we shall be showing you. It's originally created by Amnesty International. If you stay with me right after the break, I'll bring you that documentary.